Man, this week, the name on the marquee has got to be Almighty Arnold Allen, who this past weekend defeated Calvin Kattar by TKO via knee injury. The official time coming at only 8 seconds into round number 2, or excuse me, the 8-second mark of round number 2. Tough way to end the fight with Kattar pretty much blowing out his knee. Mark, let me throw it over to you first. What were your impressions of the performances of both these men in the first round, and then, of course, going into the second, and how it ended?
Yeah, so this sucked. This feels like it's happening too often this year in MMA. I feel like more than we are accustomed to. These type of main event, co-main event, big deal fights are ending in injury like this. So not great, but the first round was solid. It looked pretty much exactly how I thought it would, to be honest. Very competitive exchanges. Both men landing and finding openings for shots. A couple of bursts for Allen, as he's prone to do. Kattar calm under the fire. Kattar starting to find the timing with his hands a little bit as the fight went on. Allen responding with some of the bigger, wider punches. You know, it's kind of what I thought we'd see. I thought Allen might be edging early. Kattar would come back later in the fight. But then 30 seconds left in round 1. Kattar jumps. He gets pulled backwards a bit by Allen as Allen evades what looked like it was a knee attempt. And Kattar lands awkwardly on the right leg, and that's that. I mean, credit to him. He stayed in the fight. He didn't let the Allen swarm or the choke get him out of there. But Allen knew, and he knew all he needed was one more shot that impacted that knee, and he got it right away to start round 2. Kicks the left calf. Kattar has to brace on the right leg. And the right leg says, nope, we can't do that. And that's all she wrote. So that sucked. Allen gets the win. It's a big win in name. Unfortunately, as he said, it's not really the statement that he was looking to make in terms of a title claim. But he gets it done. Obviously, it's a tough break for Kattar. And Allen said it, but, man, what a weird place the top of featherweight is right now. I mean, the 3 guys with a chance to maybe grab a title shot are Yair, who just won due to an injury over Ortega, Allen, who just won due to this injury, and Emmett, who just won a decision that many people thought he didn't win. So you usually don't see, like, all 3 of the top contenders in a division kind of coming off non-statement results, but that's where we're at in featherweight, so it's a little weird up at the top right now. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Kattar said what? He said, like, featherweight shit right now?
Allen, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, he said it's shit.
I think he meant like that, yeah.
I think he meant more of like it's a shit show, not like it's a shitty division.
He meant exactly that. He was talking about how these fights keep ending weird because he mentioned that Yair fight and
yeah,
it muddies everything up.
Yeah,
man. Omar, let's bring you in here, buddy. What were your thoughts in the way that fight finished, and your impressions of the performance of these featherweights early on in the first round?
So, to be honest, I thought Allen looked fantastic. I thought he was pushing the pace. I thought he had a lot of power in his hooks. We were joking afterwards. I think Allen was talking about how he messed up his hand. And I was joking about how I wonder how he doesn't break his hand every fight. The way he
pretty
throws.
much does. Every single fight he hurts his hand.
The way he throws and the consistency at that strength that he throws is crazy. And, you know, those little gloves that he has, at the end of the day, they're not really protecting much. I think if anything, it's really to stop cuts from happening as easily than you do when you have bare knuckle. But it doesn't really stop much of anything in there as far as impact is concerned. So Allen did what he needed to do, man. I thought it was a beautiful performance. I think it sucked, obviously, the way it happened. Like Mark said, he goes, Kattar goes for a flying knee. Kattar goes for a flying knee. And, Allen quarter turns out, and I think Kattar tried to follow him while he was midair and turned his body in a different direction than what his momentum was going. And so his knee, had he kept going forward, he would have been fine. But his knee at that point had turned because he wanted to go left to where Allen was. And the forward momentum basically made it's almost like if your car is going forward and all of a sudden it's sideways, that bitch is going to flip and fly everywhere. It's kind of what happens to Kattar's knee. I want to call him Kattar so bad. But yeah, that's what happened to Kattar's knee, and the images, the video, if you've seen it, is gross.
That video's not so bad. It's the end. It's the round 2
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That one is even worse. Yes,
it's such a gruesome, non-gruesome injury.
because you know what it is,
You
and
just
you
see
see it
like,
pop in,
You see
pop
the legs
out.
kind of twitch, and you know what's happening.
Feel it.
Ugh.
Yep. Yep.
It's terrible.
Okay, so Arnold Allen, only 28 years old, and he has climbed to the upper echelon of 145-pound division in the UFC. He's extended his winning streak to 12 wins in a row now, and he has stayed undefeated under the UFC banner. He's now 10-0 in the UFC. Mark, put on that matchmaker hat. What would you do with Arnold Allen next at 145 pounds?
I think that you just look at those three guys that I just mentioned, Allen, Yair, and Josh Emmett. See who's healthy, see who's ready to fight, and whatever two are that answer, you put them in a cage. Especially with Volk now headed up to challenge at lightweight for the time being. I think you get this moving, you put two of those guys in a cage. That way you have a clear contender eventually waiting for Volk. And then whoever is the odd man out, when he's ready, he can fight the winner of this upcoming Bryce Mitchell and Ilia Topuria fight, I would say, especially if it's Bryce, because Bryce is kind of right there as well.
Omar, any other names that you would most want to see Arnold Allen match up with next at 145?
I mean, Mark kind of has the right idea. Obviously, I want to see him matched up with all of these guys to see really where he stands. I thought he looked good against Kattar, but what we saw was the very beginning of a fight that didn't really go very far after a certain point. So, you can take away what you can from that fight, but it's not the full picture. So there's still questions I think that need to be answered. I think he can do it. I do think that he can become champion. I think he's very, very good. Beating Volkanovski is obviously a tall order, but I think he's up to the task as far as making it competitive and me not just thinking that Volkanovski's going to run him over. But, him against Josh Emmett is a fantastic stylistic matchup. I think they're very, very similar in their approach to the game. I just think Allen is a little bit better at it. Yair would be a fun fight to see Yair having to use his movement to counter Allen's power and his forward pressure. Max Holloway would also be very interesting to see technique versus the power of Allen, to see if Allen could potentially work his way up to that technique and counter it and use it to his advantage, because Max Holloway is very hittable if you can find him. So it would be interesting to see if Allen can live up to any of those expectations. And I think any one of those three I think would be fantastic, especially while Volkanovski is off, because I think all three of those guys are healthy, right? Max looks like he's good. Yair I haven't heard anything about, but I would imagine he's okay.
Yeah, I haven't heard a peep on Yair or Emmett in a while,
Yeah.
which is why I kind of threw it out there that, and then plus Allen said he hurt his hand, so it's I'm just not sure where all these guys are at in terms of when they can fight.
Yeah.
Real quick, I love what you just said about Allen. I think you said something like there are still questions that need to be answered, and I feel like that sentiment is expressed way more often about guys who are undefeated or nearly undefeated, like Allen is. He's 19-1, and I just think that's always interesting. It's like a guy who's so good that he's gotten to 19-1 as a pro, and that sentiment is expressed about them. There's still some question marks. It's almost like when a guy is so good and has so few losses, there are more question marks. You're wondering where his boundaries are.
Yeah.
Good point. It's funny.
Thank you. Let's talk real quick about Calvin Kattar. So he's 34 years old, and he has now lost 2 in a row. This is actually the first time in his career that he's lost back-to-back fights. And now he also has lost 3 of his last 4. Omar, first of all, the question is, what do you think the timeline of this knee injury is? And if so, where would you want to see him go next at featherweight?
I probably would imagine at this point we won't see him until late next year at the earliest. If it's a full tear, he's probably going to need at least 6 months to a year, depending on how he chooses to repair it. I believe, if I remember the Dom stuff correctly, if he uses one of those cadaver ligaments, depending on, I don't know what the injury is specifically. I don't know what blew in his knee, but I'm assuming it's one of the ligaments in his knee. So if he uses a cadaver one, then I think if it takes right, it's 6 months. If it doesn't take right, then it's even longer than that, and that's what fucked up Dom's timeline, years ago. If he uses one of his, I forgot how they do it, but if he uses one of his own body parts to replace the ligament, then I think that takes about a year or so to repair. But there's a better chance that it heals properly, it stays strong, and it doesn't fuck up. So if he doesn't want to rush it, that's probably the way he would want to go to get that repaired. And then we probably won't see him till maybe mid 2024, early 2024. So I'd probably count him out for 2023 if the injury is really bad, which seemed to be.
Yeah. Mark, if there was no knee injury, if it was just sort of a regular TKO loss, where would you go next with Kattar if you were the matchmaker?
That's a funny question. I don't know. I agree we probably don't see him for like at least a year here. If it was ever something that's more minor than we realize, and maybe him and Ortega ended up on similar timelines, you could maybe throw them in there with each other. I'm sure they'd make for an entertaining scrap. But yeah, I don't know that it makes sense to be putting him in there with guys right now because it does feel like it's going to be a minute.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Even Yair is at the middle point, I think, of this healing process because he got surgery not long after he was in that fight with Yair.
Ortega,
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So I've seen him, working out and doing stuff with his shoulders strapped up.
Right.
So it looks like he's still in the middle of it. So we might not see him for quite some time too.
Yeah, I'm imagining maybe like summer for him, something like that. But I don't really know.
Yeah.
Well, injury or not, with that performance, Arnold Allen has pretty much stamped his ticket to the elite at featherweight. And congrats to him.